again to our broadcast, Living by Faith. I'm Pastor David Foster. I hope you've enjoyed the lessons we have been giving you. We've been doing a series called Faith in Theirs, all right? And so I am going to take a quick pause on that this week because I have something I want to share, a sermon that the Lord gave unto me, and I want to just talk about that. I'm going to really dig deeper into this pretty soon. But it all lines up and works alongside faith and becoming or being a faith in there. It's important that we understand the totality of that because it has such powerful ramifications when we walk into our fullness of faith. All right. So tonight I'm gonna be in Philippians 4:15. I'm gonna start in Philippians 4:15. I'm gonna be right there in the Amplified version. Make sure you subscribe this video, like and subscribe to our channel. Like this video, comment on this video as it helps our views, helps it get pushed to the top. Make sure you check out our website, faithliveshere.org. Also, you can connect with me in various social media platforms, Facebook, David B. Foster, as well as Instagram, DAVBFOS, and Twitter is the same handle. Also, you can go to my personal website, davidbfoster.org, davidbfoster.org. All right, so let's get into it. Philippians 4:15. Here Paul is talking to the church at Philippi, and he says, you Philippians yourselves well know that in the early days of the gospel ministry, when I left Macedonia, no church assembly entered into partnership with me and opened up a debit and a credit account in giving and receiving except you only, right? Except you only. So tonight, I want to talk about invisible transactions, right? Invisible transactions. What we must understand, or what I want to really start off with tonight, is that we understand that money is spiritual, right? Money is spiritual. Remember, Mark chapter 8, verse 36 says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to lose his soul, right? And then 1 Timothy 6:10 says that the love of money is the root of all evil, right? And so we understand that money itself is spiritual. Matter of fact, type that down below. Money is spiritual. Money is spiritual, right? Money travels spiritually or invisibly every day. All right. If someone's going to send you some money, let's say via Cash App or some other electronic transfer means, they don't physically give you money. No, but you do receive the money. How do you receive it? It's received because that money travels spiritually, right? It's important to denote that when we're talking about things in the spirit world is not just limited to heaven, right? A lot of times when we hear the spirit world, we think of heaven, or perhaps we even may categorize and put hell right in there with it. But the spirit world is vast. It encompasses the breadth, the length, and the depth of it cannot be comprehended by the human mind. It goes beyond the expanse of our understanding. And so when we're talking about the spirit world, it's not just limited to heaven. Heaven is a spiritual place, but also we understand that heaven is not the end and be all of the spirit world, right? And so money travels spiritually or electronically or invisibly every single day, right? And so if you pay a bill online, right? If you ever pay your utility bill, your mortgage, your rent, car note, 9 times out of 10, you're going to do it electronically, right? And when they receive your payment or your money, they notify you. And guess what? If they don't receive your payment, they're going to notify you as well, right? But their money is not physically taken 9 times out of 10 to their institution or to their bank, right? No, it's sent electronically or it's sent spiritually, right? Now, if all of this is done invisibly or it's done spiritually, right, we must understand that there must be something powerful, something beyond our human understanding in the spirit world, right? Because it travels, yes, that's good. It travels beyond our normal speed or either our normal comprehension, right? So let's say I'm in Florida, right? I want to pay a bill, and the corporate office of where I'm paying the bill is in Utah, right? In a matter of seconds, I can send some money to that place. Why? Because the things in the spirit world move much faster than things in the natural world. Things in the spirit world mature much faster than things in the natural, right? That's why when God created Adam, he wasn't created as a baby. Adam was created as a full grown man. Why? Because Adam came directly out of the spirit. And because he came out of the spirit, he came out fully mature. Somebody say fully matured, right? And so Jesus even told us in Matthew 6, he says that no man can serve what? Two masters. For either will hate one, love the other, hold to one, or despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And so now Jesus juxtaposed and he puts money or mammon or the spirit of money in direct contradiction to God. All right. But at the same time, he says that it is possible. That's good. It's possible for both of these things to be worshiped, right? And we know the scripture tells us that God is the spirit, right? John tells us that God is the spirit, and they that worship him what? Must worship him in spirit and in truth, right? It did not say that we must worship him physically. Although physical worship is important, right? Physical worship is a gateway and a key to the spirit world. But it says explicitly that God is the spirit, and therefore, if you do not, this is good, worship God with your spirit, right? Then your worship does not connect you to God. Why? Because God is the spirit. And then in order to worship God, you must first worship him in spirit. And then secondarily, it must be in truth, right? Because the flesh, the physical, can try to hide or can try to emotionalize worship, right? But even though you can worship God with your emotions, right? You should not allow worship to be emotionalized. No, you should allow it to be spiritualized, and you should allow it to be founded in truth. Very important. All right. So Jesus said, look, you cannot serve God and mammon, right? So we understand there are things happening in the visible world every day, all day, that we are unaware of. As a matter of fact, Paul says that we also entertain angels unaware. In other words, we're unable to see the angelic beings and hosts that interact with us on a day-to-day basis, right? Let me read this again. Philippians verse 15. It says, you Philippians well know that in the early days of the gospel ministry, when I left Macedonia, no church assembly entered into partnership with me and opened up a debit and a credit account and giving and receiving except you, right? Let me tell you this, money is already in your account, right? Money is already in your account, right? Anytime you give, money is credited to your heavenly account, right? And you're probably like, nah, preacher, Then you got that confused. Every time I give in church, every time I give to a ministry, money is debited out of my account. Well, no, you have to understand. I'm talking about your heavenly account. I'm talking about your invisible account. I'm talking about your spiritual bank account, right? Every time you give, money is deposited into your spiritual bank account, right? Here's what Paul is talking about. He's talking about a heavenly account. He's talking about an invisible account. He's talking about a spiritual account that cannot be seen with the eyes of man, but it can be accessed by the hands of man, right? You access it by sowing, right? That's why he talks about debits and credits, and then he talks about giving and receiving. Remember, there's no transaction when you take place. There's no transaction that takes place with God that's one-sided. Right, the old things you say you can't be God given. Right, Luke 6:38 tells us give and what. Then it gives us a litany of things that's going to happen, right? And it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give into your bosom, right? Imagine that. You give to God, and then God finds a way to have men to give back to you, right? Something invisible must be happening. Something spiritual must be taking place, right? Something must be uh, um, 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 happening in the heavenlies in order for it to go from the heaven, right, to come back down to earth. And as a matter of fact, this is just a bonus. Just heard this in my spirit. God said that's how worship works, right? Worship, we should worship vertically and not horizontally. What I mean by that, we should worship God, and we worship God. Guess what? That worship, right? God receives it, and then he redistributes it back to us in the form of grace and mercy and peace and joy and adulation and all different types of things that God does. But I want you to understand that there's something happening in the heaven. Say that with me. There's something happening in heaven right now. Yeah. There's something transpiring. There's something taking place. There's something on the horizon. I'm telling you, your invisible account, right, is being touched, right? Right, how? By these invisible transactions. When you give in church, right, it's not baseless, right? It's not useless. No, as a matter of fact, it's one of the most useful things to do. Why? Because when you give, you're more like God. Right? How do I know that? John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he what? He gave, right? His only begotten son." And sometimes, and look, I'm just gonna tell you, you gotta give your only. You got to give all you got. You got to give the last, right? That's what Elijah told the lady who two sons were about to be taken away as slaves. He said, "Hey, what do you have in your house?" She said, "I only have a pot of oil," right? And so sometimes you got to give your last, right? So that, look, God can begin to work on your behalf. Give your last so God can work on your behalf, right? Look at this, look at this, look at this. Money is already in your account. It's an invisible account, right? It's a spiritual account, right? It's a heavenly account, right? When you give to a church, you don't just give to a pastor, a prophet, a bishop. No, um, you become partners with that church. But greater than that, guess what? You become partners with heaven. You become partners with heaven. And anytime there's a partnership, that means two parties or individuals come together, right, to agree to uphold a particular set of rules, laws, right, or principles, right? One party has to do one thing, one party has to do another. It's not a one-sided transaction. It's not a one-sided interaction. No, when you enter into a partnership, I'm telling you, with church, you enter into partnership with heaven, right? And so when you open up an account, in the natural, let's talk about going to a bank. You have a responsibility, right? You have a responsibility. And also, guess what? That bank has a responsibility, right? Why? Because there's a partnership you're going. They say in order for you to be able to house your money here, to gain interest on this account, even though how small it may be, to have access to some of the products we offer, like credit cards and debit cards, or perhaps you want to buy a home or a vehicle, right? Well, in order to do that, they say you have to become a member, right? If it's a credit union, or you have to open up an account with the bank, right? And so there's two particular responsibilities that must be upholded. I'm telling you, you cannot open up any account at any bank with no money. As a matter of fact, that's one of the requirements. If you don't have any money, guess what? Your account is not going to be open up. And that's one of the problems we have in the church. That's one of the problems we have in Christian, right? We want something for nothing. Many people want God to bless them, right? When they have not upheld their end of the partnership, right? Remember, you're partners with God. You're partners with heaven. You're partners with the spirit world, right? And so in order for you to do this, Paul said, look, you must give, right? And when you give, guess what? That opens up your heavenly, invisible, and spiritual account. But not only that, then you have access to, guess what? To the entire bank of heaven. I love that. Yeah. You have access to the entire bank of heaven. The whole host of heaven is at your disposal. Every product, yeah. Everything is at your disposal when you open up an account in the bank of heaven. Right? Let me look at this. Right. Remember, you have a responsibility. Right. You can't get into the mindset of thinking that you can withdraw something that has not been deposited. Right? That's another skewed and misinformed mindset that's in the church, is that, hey, God, I want to be blessed financially, but I've not participated in a financial transaction. Right? God said, now I can bless you in a multitude of ways, right? I can bless you with a multitude of spiritual gifts or blessings, right? There's things that I can do for you, right? And things that I can do with you. But in order for you to have a continued flow from heaven, you're going to have a continued soul on earth. Yeah, if you want a continued flow, you must have a continued soul, right? And if you don't sow, money won't flow, right? Now, it won't flow from your heavenly account. Now, it can flow many ways. You can be rich. Listen to me. You can be rich without giving to God. You can be rich without tithing. You can be financially blessed, not even just talking about rich. You can be financially blessed without giving a tithe a day in your life. But if you want access to heaven's bank, you're going to have to participate according to heaven's principle. And heaven's principle requires that you give, right, in order that you can receive, right? That's what it is, right? That's what it is, right? And let me read this part of this, verse 15. Let me read this part of it. It says, no church assembly entered into what? Partnership with me and opened up a debit and a credit account in giving and receiving, right? It says, except you on it. It's important that we understand that, look, this partnership is based on debits and credits. This partnership is based on giving and receiving, right? The problem we have is that we want much more. We want much more given to us, right, than we've actually sown. We want to receive more than we've given, right? And now, before you say anything, Let me clear this up, right? Let me bring clarity to this, because immediately this is because of Matthew 6:38, or no, Luke 6:38. I'm sorry, Luke 6:38 and Matthew 13:8. Luke 6:38, Matthew 13:8. Because Luke 6:38 says, "Give and it shall be given you." We just talked about that. But then Matthew 13:8 says that we can have 30, 60, and then 100-fold return. Now that's absolutely, positively, 100% true, right? But what we must get into the detail of this, understanding that, look, there are certain principles that cannot be changed, altered, or amended in the spirit world, right? And so in the natural world, there are certain rules as well, right? If you deposit money in the bank, guess what? It depends on what you deposit, how much you deposit, when you deposit. All of that's going to determine when you can withdraw or when you can receive your money. And so it goes right along, hand in hand, in the spirit world. It's going to depend on how much you gave, when you gave, right? And guess what? It's going to determine all of this is going to have an effect on when you can receive your money, right? You can't just say, walking in the church and going in and say, "Hey, I'm going to put $1,000 down, or I'm going to put $10 down, all right? Or I want to give $5 in this offering. All right, God, where's my money at?" It don't work like that. It don't work like that, right? Matter of fact, I beg you to keep your money if you think it does, until you get some understanding, right? You must get to a deeper level of revelation and understanding on how things work in the kingdom. But I want you to know that, look, if you're a sower, if you're a giver, you have a heavenly account that you can access, that's waiting for you to tap into, right? And I may talk about part two. I may do part two to tell you that there. But I want people to really understand that there is a spiritual realm that you can access, right? But you have to allow your money to go through the proper process, rules, channels, right, and principles, so that you can earn heavenly interest on your heavenly seed, right? If you make an investment, right, most people want to make an investment, and like the first thing they say, "Well, how soon can I get this money back?" Right? Right? But you have to understand there's a certain time period that's necessary for you to be able to invest money, and then for you to receive a return on your investment. Same way in the spirit world. You can't just say, "I'm going to give money today in church and I want God to bless me financially tomorrow." It doesn't work like that. Why? There's a lot of other things that's determining that. I told you the amount you give, when you give, how you give, right? And then you have to understand you have an enemy that is trying to keep you from receiving your interest. They're trying to keep you from receiving your return, right? And this is why we tithe. We tithe because the Bible says that He will rebuke the devourer, right? We don't tithe according to Malachi, although Malachi has principles of tithing in it. No, we tithe according to Genesis, right? And Genesis takes us on to Hebrews chapter 6 and Hebrews chapter 7. And so we don't tithe according to the law, we tithe according to love. And when you tithe according to love, you connect yourself right back to 2 Corinthians chapter 9 that says God loves a cheerful giver, right? And so when you give out of love, right, you're not giving out of a wrong place or position, expecting to receive something just because you gave money. No, your motive is that I want to be a blessing to this ministry. I want to be a blessing to this church. I want to be a blessing to the kingdom, right? And then I have a revelation. I have an understanding that, look, I do this out of obedience and not obligation, right? See, that's the reason that there was a difference in Cain and Abel, right? Abel gave his seed. The Bible says that Abel gave his best seed, right? But Abel didn't give his best seed wasn't necessarily his biggest seed, right? And so your best seed may not be your biggest seed. The widow's mite best seed was a half a penny, right? And Jesus, as a matter of fact, the Bible says that Jesus stood over by the treasure. In other words, he watched the offering and he saw how people gave big amounts and large amounts. But then here comes a woman who gives a half a penny, a widow's mite. And Jesus said, look, she's giving more than all. Why? Because she gave her best. Your best is your biggest. But your biggest is not necessarily your best, right? Just because you give a $10,000 or $1,000 seed, right? That doesn't mean that that's your best seed. No, the best seed, again, takes us back to Cain and Abel. Abel gave about, the Bible said, out of his first fruits, or he gave the best, right? In other words, Abel, he understood that he was given out of obedience and not obligation, right? And so again, like I said, we don't tithe according to the law. We tithe according to love. We don't give according to the law. We give out of love, right? Why? Because we give out of obedience and not obligation, right? Secondly, Abel gave based off revelation, right? He gave off revelation, not based on denomination. See, a lot of people say you got to give off denomination, right? You got to give a big seed. If you don't give this seed, then I'm telling you, God not gonna move. No, the devil's a lie. I don't believe that. I don't preach that. I don't teach that. And I beg you not to subscribe to that school of thought that just because you give a certain seed, a big seed, that God is going to move quicker than if you give a lower denomination of seed. It's all about obedience. It's all about revelation. And when you have a revelation on what you must give and how you might give or must give, then God will step in, and then God will cause your heavenly account to earn heavenly interest. And then that's when the 30, the 60, and the 100-fold comes in, right? But you have to understand, it comes in a spiritual time frame and not a natural time frame, right? This. Look at this. Look at this water. When I first got saved, I gave one way, right? I was giving because I knew that was the right thing to do. But I didn't have a revelation of giving. I was giving out of obedience, but it was a blind obedience, right? But once I got a revelation on what I was supposed to do, then I was able to what? I was able to give different, right? I live different because I give different. Right? People always say, well, David, how do you do this? Or how you keep doing this? Or how do you have that? I don't have that because, see, it's not because of the money. It's not because of the money I receive. It's because of the money I give. I'm not blessed because of what comes in. I'm blessed because of what goes out. I'm blessed because of what I sow, right? Not because of what I reap, right? Reaping is a direct result of what I sow. See, high-class givers always become high-class livers, right? Right? Give the way you want to live, right? Give the way you want to live. If you want to live big, give big, right? But don't just stop there, right? Don't just stop there. If you want to live big, give big. But guess what? If you want to live free, guess what? Give freely, right? If you want to live bountifully, give bountifully, right? If you want to live cheerfully, give cheerfully. And then God will cause you to be blessed beyond measure. Let your seed be a representation of the life that you live, right? The way you give, let that represent the way you live, the way you give, the way you give, let that be a representation of how you live, right? I live big because I give big. I don't live big because I receive big, right? No, that's a direct result. That's a principle, right? That's a commandment, right? That's a spiritual law that happens, right? Genesis 8, right? And 22 says, as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, guess what? It'll never cease, right? As long as this earth is here, right? As long as this globe we're spinning on, right? And millions and millions of revolutions a day, as long as it exists, guess what? Seed time and harvest would never, ever cease, right? I gotta get you out of here, right? I'm gonna finish this up next week, so it looks like I'm probably already 3 sermons in based upon just what I know I've already studied. But let me leave you with this. Genesis 8:22. Let me leave you with this. Genesis 8:22 says, seed time and harvest shall never cease. Remember this now. I said when you give, you can't determine how or when your seed is going to come back, right? You can't determine the harvest, right? But you can determine how you sow. Why? Because time is always connected to seed. It's not connected to harvest. Now, people say it's harvest time, right? But guess what? People only know it's harvest time when the harvest comes. That's good to me, man. That's a good revelation. People only know it's harvest time when the harvest comes. They would say, it's harvest time, right? Well, harvest time is only coming when it's a harvest. But guess what? Right? And harvest time, right? I'm going to take it to natural, right? Harvest time is a set time, right? Harvest time can't be moved. It can't be finagled around. No, harvest time is a set time. In the natural, there's a certain time of year that fruits, crops, right, flowers are going to be harvested, or they're going to blossom, or they're going to bloom, or they're going to grow, right? It's a certain set time. It's also a certain set time in the spirit, right? Right now, that doesn't mean it's a certain date, right? Because the spirit world is not locked in, or is not boxed in by time. Why? Because harvest, right? Even though there's a set time, it's not necessarily a set date or a set hour. No, but seed is, right? Seed time, right? Seed is always connected to time, right? But guess what? Before there's time, there's seed. And after there's time, there's harvest, right? What am I trying to get you to say? If you get the real revelation that it's not about what you're receiving, it's about what you're giving, right? And the more you give, the more you're going to receive, right? That's what Jesus said. Jesus said, it's better to give than it is what? To receive. Why? Because your receiving is connecting to your giving, right? And any time you give seed, guess what? Now you've guaranteed a harvest. Every seed has a built-in harvest. Genesis says you give, there's seeding seed, or you give seed that has seed on the inside of it. Every fruit has seed inside of it, right? Do something for me, right? Look up a picture of a real banana, right? A real banana, right? Not a genetically modified one. Bananas have seeds in them, real banana, right? And guess what? Your seed has seed on the inside of it. That's why I know that when you sow seed, guess what? God will guarantee that you'll have a harvest coming back. Why? Because you're giving and participating in invisible transactions, right? And we serve the invisible God, right? In other words, God cannot be put in a box. He's so expansive, which means that he can get anything to you at any time, right? From anywhere, from anybody. Let me say that again, right? Hope I can say it just right way, right? God can get anything to you at any time, right? From anywhere, right? From anybody, right? So whatever you need, Jesus again taught on that in Matthew 6. He said, look, your heavenly Father already knows what you have need of, right? And are you not more than the birds of the air and the lilies of the field? Yes, you are. You're God's son. You're God's daughter. You're the apple of God's eye. God said, look, I'm going to take care of you. If I don't take care of nobody else, I'm going to take care of you. Why? Because you're my children, right? All I need you to do to believe, right? He is a good, good Father, right? Look, hope y'all enjoyed this. Look, remember to subscribe, like, share this video. Until next time, we'll see you real soon. Peace out.